Hello, I'm Verity and welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to be taking part in the Save the Crafty YouTuber video hop, and I've loved watching the two previous hops Justine's hosted, so I'm really thrilled to be taking part in this one. The Save the Crafty YouTuber video hop is a celebration of card making video tutorials created by a group of talented crafters from all different styles and levels. We're coming together to give our viewers a chance to discover other amazing card makers and help reach monetization goals. So all you have to do is watch, like the video and consider subscribing. So click the link in the video description below just to hop over to the next video. Make sure you let yourself be inspired with this hop. Don't forget to comment because we have a ton of prizes to give away. Please indicate though if you're located in the USA or international so that prizes can be awarded appropriately, as some prizes, though not all, have restrictions on them. I'm giving away a prize if you leave a lovely comment below, and you'll see what you could be winning later on in the video, so stick around to the end of the video. Today in this video I'm showing you 5 ways to use embossing folders in your projects, from a simple technique to more interesting ways to use the folders in your cards. To make it bright and colourful, I also went with a lovely rainbow colour scheme. Who doesn't love rainbows? For the first technique, I've gone back to basics and just used an embossing folder simply with coloured card. I'm using a dotted embossing folder from Sizzix and a selection of coloured card from a 6x6 Papermania card pack, selecting the colours of the rainbow. So this is an A4 folder and I ran the red cardstock through my Big Shot Plus machine with the sandwich set up for embossing folders. So take out adapter A and just use adapter B. For other machines you'll need to check your manual. Once the rainbow had been embossed, I trimmed the cards down to 1.5 inch strips and added double-sided tape to the back. Starting with the red piece, I placed it down at the top of the card, aligning the edges up, and use my grid line mats to then add the orange piece, overlapping the card. If you prefer, you can trim the card down so that the strips don't overlap for a more smooth card, but I liked the extra texture it adds. Once all the pieces were added, I used my trimmer to cut off the excess and overhang, and this was then adhered to a card base with an 1/8 of an inch border. So to finish the card off, I added a white layered die cut from Happy. To finish the card off, I added a white layered Happy die cut from Lawn Fawn, finished with an embossed sentiment on black card using an opaque bright white embossing powder from WOW, and also a few white Nova drops from Tonic Studios. So this is a very easy and simple technique, and this style of embossing with the bright colours really reminds me of Lego, so I think this makes a great card for a child. For the second technique, you can emboss over ink blended backgrounds, so this is another easy method to try out. Using a selection of Catherine Poole inks, I used some ink blending brushes to create a rainbow background on Nina Soda White cardstock. Starting off with the Rocking Red ink, I just gradually build up the colour using more of a circular motion. And for the yellow, I used Limoncello, and I just made sure this overlapped the Rocking Red just to create the orange in the rainbow. I then used Fiesta Blue and overlapped this with the yellow to create the green, and I also added some Juniper Mist because this just adds a little bit more of a darker blue to get that indigo. And lastly, I added Grape Crush for the violet, which blends beautifully with the Juniper Mist, and I love this colour combination. When I was happy with the ink blending, I ran this through my machine and I used the Crafter's Companion Hessian embossing folder. I just love the texture this folder has given this really vibrant background. I trimmed the panel down and foam mounted it onto a white card base, and to finish the card off I added a white layered Happy die cut from Alt New, and an embossed sentiment was added along with a few sequins from Trinity Stamps. So this technique is great if you don't have a lot of coloured card but have an array of inks in your craft stash, so you can get the look of an embossed coloured card quite easily. For the third technique, I'm going to use spritz inking to create a faux watercolour look. I'm using a Tim Holtz alterations folder from Sizzix and a selection of distress oxides. So first of all, I'm applying the wilted violet to one side of the embossing folder, and this is the side that will be debossed into the cardstock. However, if you prefer the other side, you can use the other side. It's entirely up to you. I then applied Blueprint Sketch, Salty Ocean, Mowed Lawn, Squeezed Lemonade, Spice Marmalade and Candied Apple to the folder. Now don't worry about overlapping the colours whilst you're applying the ink, because we're going to spritz the folder with water. This will then start to move the inks and allow them to blend. So position some distress watercolour card in the folder and close it shut. Next, run this through your machine to emboss it. And as you remove it, you're going to get this lovely textured faux watercolour look to your embossed design. The card was finished off by foam mounting it onto a card base, and a white layered Hello die cut from All Too New with some added glossy accents on top for shine was added to the panel, as well as an embossed sentiment. This technique creates fun, messy backgrounds, but you do get a bit of control over it, but each time your background might look ever so slightly different, just depending on how the water moves your inks. So for the fourth technique, I'm using embossing folders with alcohol ink backgrounds. Now, alcohol inks can create fun, unique backgrounds, but using an embossing folder allows you to add a design to that background as well. So I dropped a selection of inks onto some Yupo paper, and I started off with watermelon, then coral, dandelion pearl ink, botanical, sailboat, indigo, and villainous pearl ink. Now make sure your room is really well ventilated when you're using alcohol inks, because it's quite a strong smell. I like to use a straw then to also move the inks about, and I also added some alcohol ink blending solution to help move the ink around. I also splattered some of this alcohol blending solution over the top to just give a bit more added texture really. Before the background was completely dry, I added some foil detail to areas where the ink was still sticky. I placed some rose gold foil from Wild embossing powders over the top, burnished it with my finger, and then removed the sheet. So some of the foil was going to transfer where this sticky ink is, giving a very metal marbleized look. Now I got a little ink transfer from the foil sheet, as I had used this piece on another alcohol ink background in the past, and there was a little bit of alcohol ink left on it. So when it touched the new alcohol ink background, it just got reactivated. So to fix this mistake, I cut the background down into 2 strips to get 2 cards, and I used a leaf vine embossing folder from Sizzix to emboss these 2 pieces. Now to keep the strips straight whilst embossing them in the folder, because this pattern has quite a vertical pattern to it, I applied a little repositionable tape on the back and then adhered them down into the folder. To add more texture to one of these pieces, I used my sand eraser to run over the top to remove some of the ink over the embossed areas. Once you've done this though, you might just want to run your eraser over a scrap of paper just to remove the ink that's transferred onto the eraser, but alternatively, if you have it to hand, you can use sandpaper. These were then finished off with some sentiments from Avery L Sentimental Die Collection, along with a couple of smaller heat embossed sentiments. And I kept the cards quite simple because the bold colours really popped against that white, and I wanted to allow the foil to shine. For the last technique, I used the folder to transfer ink to create a faux letterpress design. Now, using a selection of Catherine Paul inks, I added the ink to the raised side of the design in the embossing folder from Do Crafts. You only want to tap lightly. This is to prevent ink transferring to all of the folder. You only want it to the raised areas. These inks are great for doing this because they transfer ink really well without much pressure. Now, if you do get ink in the areas where you didn't want it to, just use a baby wipe just to remove that excess ink. Now, once the design is inked up, place your card in the folder and close it shut. I would advise to do this at your machine. This will prevent the card from moving and smudging the ink as you're moving from your desk to your machine. If you're like me, you haven't got the space to have your machine on your desk. Now, once it was run through the machine, the ink's going to have transferred into that debossed design, giving a faux letterpress look. Now, you can use your mono sand eraser again if any excess ink has transferred to areas of the card, allowing you to clean up the design. I added a thanks die cut from Birch Press Design, along with an embossed sentiment and a few sequins from Trinity Stamps. Now, this technique gives a lovely, elegant look to your cards, and I think out of all the 5 techniques, it's my favourite. What's more, you could step this up once more by using some embossing ink as an alternative and add some embossing powder and heat setting that. I often forget about my embossing folders, but they're really very versatile and can be used in a simple way with cardstock or create some really fun and unique embossed backgrounds. No matter your budget, skill or time, you can easily use them in your cards and are a budget-friendly craft tool. As part of the Save the Crafty YouTuber video hop, I'm giving away to one lucky commenter the Blossoms Vine embossing folder from Do Crafts, which I used on my last card. But don't worry, you will be getting a new folder. What's more, I'm also including a script alphabet die set and an adhesive vellum sheet pack as well. I will pay the postage and shipping, but any local taxes are at the recipient's cost. So remember to leave a comment below to be in for a chance to win. To continue along the hop, just make sure you click the link in the description box below to take you on to the next stop on the hop, and you can also start right at the beginning of the hop over at Justine's channel. If you're not a subscriber already, why not consider clicking the button below along with the bell icon to be notified when my next video is up. I really do appreciate all your support. Also, you might want to check out this other video for more inspiration. Until next time, happy crafting!